Think about what you used this morning before you said a single word to anyone. You may have searched something on Google, opened Gemini, Google's own AI model, or used any number of tools or AI models that connect back to Google's data and search infrastructure. Maybe you checked your Gmail, pulled up maps for directions, or watched something on YouTube. And in all likelihood, you did all of that without paying anything. Google Search, free since the day it launched. Gmail, free since 2004. Google Maps, free. Chrome, free. YouTube, free to watch. And yet the company behind all of these products has generated trillions of dollars in revenue over the years. Trillions. From products that the overwhelming majority of its users have never paid a single dollar for. So the one question that actually unlocks how the modern internet works is this. The one that almost nobody who uses these products daily has ever been given a real answer to. Who is actually paying? And what are they paying for? And what does the answer mean for you, specifically? Because when you understand the answer to those two questions at the mechanical level, not the surface level, the actual mechanical level, the way you see search results, free apps, and the content you consume without paying is going to change permanently. That is what this video is about. Before we go anywhere, one thing needs to be said clearly. This is not a video telling you to delete your Google account. That is a personal decision. And it is worth saying directly, this model provided genuine value to billions of people. The products built with this revenue have meaningfully aided the world's prosperity and growth in ways that are real and on the public record. What this is a structural explanation of a system that most people use daily, and almost nobody has ever had explained to them at the mechanical level. And this model is not unique to Google. Virtually every major digital platform operates some version of it. Google is the case study we are using because it is one of the largest and most structurally consequential examples in history. Now, let's get into it. Here is where the investigation starts, and it starts with the most basic economic principle there is. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is produced at zero cost. That is not a philosophical point. That is basic economics. When something is described as free, it never means the cost disappeared. It means the cost was moved somewhere else. Somebody is paying. The question is always who and how. To understand how Google answered that question, we need to go back. Not to 2004, not to the IPO. 1998, Stanford University. Two PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, are working on a search algorithm they call PageRank. The core idea is elegant. Rank web pages by how many other credible pages link to them, rather than just by keyword density. More relevant links meant better quality signals. Better signals meant better search results. The product was, for its time, measurably better than anything available. And here is something about those early days that most people do not know. Page and Brin initially did not want advertising near their search engine. In a 1998 academic paper co-authored at Stanford, they explicitly warned that advertising-funded search engines would be biased toward advertisers. They described it as a potential conflict of interest, search results shaped by who pays rather than what is actually relevant. They called it a structural problem. They wrote it down. And then, within a few years, they built exactly what they warned against. Not because they abandoned their principles arbitrarily, but because they encountered something that changed the entire calculation. They discovered what search intent actually is, and more importantly, what it is worth. Here is what search intent means in practical terms. A television commercial reaches millions of people. The overwhelming majority are not thinking about buying anything at that specific moment. A billboard reaches thousands of people passing by. Their purchase intent at that moment is entirely unknown. Direct mail reaches households. Conversion rates, historically, sit well under 2%. Now consider what happens when someone types best noise-canceling headphones under $300 into a search box. That person has just declared their purchase intent, publicly, in real time, with extraordinary specificity. They are not being interrupted by an ad. They are not passively exposed to a message. They are actively seeking a specific product category. At this specific moment, the advertiser who reaches that person at that exact moment has a commercial opportunity that no prior advertising medium could come close to creating. And here is the part that most people in finance and business miss about this. What Google built was not primarily an advertising company. It built a real-time purchase intent database and then monetized access to that database. The search box is not a utility. It is the world's largest real-time declaration of human commercial intent. And once Google understood that, the business model became clear. Sell access to those declared intentions to the advertisers who most want to reach people expressing them through an automated, real-time auction. Google launched its first advertising product, Google AdWords, in the year 2000. The system it introduced was a significant departure from how advertising had previously been sold. Before Google's approach, most advertising was sold on a fixed cost or reservation basis. You paid a set price for a specific placement for a specific period. Google introduced a performance-based, auction-driven system where advertisers bid against each other for placement and pay only when a user actually clicks. This shift from fixed placement to performance-based auction fundamentally changed the economics of advertising. By 2004, advertising revenue was already in the billions of dollars annually. By the time Google went public in August 2004, the financial trajectory was clear enough that the IPO valued the company at approximately $23 billion. And then came Gmail, then Maps, then Chrome, then YouTube, then Android. Each new product was not a separate business built for its own sake. It is worth being precise here. Google does offer paid subscription products. Key examples include Google One for expanded cloud storage and Google AI, YouTube Premium, Google Workspace for businesses. But the foundational architecture, the core products that the overwhelming majority of the world's users access daily, remains free at the point of use. And that free access is what this video is about. Each product extended the data ecosystem that made the core advertising operation more precise and more valuable. Gmail gave Google visibility into email communication patterns. Maps gave it location behavior data. Chrome gave it visibility across virtually all browser activity. YouTube gave it long-form viewing intent. What people watch for extended periods tells advertisers things that brief search queries cannot. Android gave Google reach across mobile behavior that would otherwise sit behind competitors' operating systems. The architecture is intentional. Each free product is a data collection and distribution channel that feeds the central advertising intelligence operation. And here is what most surface-level analysis of this model gets wrong. It describes the free products as a loss leader, products offered at no cost to attract users, who then generate ad revenue. The more accurate framing is that the free products are integral components of the data infrastructure that makes the advertising inventory valuable in the first place. They are not separate from the business. They are the business. The search engine generates intent signals. The browser captures browsing context. The email platform captures communication context. The Maps platform captures physical behavior context. All of those signals flow into a targeting system that allows advertisers to reach precisely defined audiences with extraordinary commercial accuracy. Now, here is where most people's understanding of this stops, and where the actual investigation begins. Because understanding that Google makes money from ads is about as useful as understanding that a bank makes money from interest. It tells you the category. It tells you nothing about the mechanism. The mechanism, The real-time auction system that runs underneath the vast majority of ad-supported pages you load across the web is something almost nobody has seen explained clearly. And that mechanism is where all of the commercial logic, the legal controversy, and the structural power of this system actually lives. Quick pause before we go inside that system. Understanding how money moves through the digital economy is one layer of how the global economic architecture works. If you want the complete framework, how monetary systems, capital flows, and institutional power actually fit together from the ground up, I made a complete course titled Applied Macroeconomics. Total course video content, 2+ hours, intentionally stripped of everything that is not directly useful. Clarity and value only. Email support is included, so you can get your specific questions answered directly. The link is in the description. Take a look when you're done here. Now, inside the auction, you click on a URL. A page begins to load. In the time between that click and the page appearing fully on your screen, something happens that most people have no idea exists. In automated auction runs, bids are submitted, a winner is determined, an ad is selected and delivered. The entire sequence, from your page request to a specific advertiser winning the right to show you a specific ad, takes approximately 100 to 200 milliseconds. Faster than a human blink. Nobody told you it was happening. This system is called real-time bidding, RTB. And understanding how it works mechanically changes the way you look at the internet. Let's build this from scratch. There are 3 distinct layers in the technology infrastructure that manages this auction process, what people inside the industry call the ad tech stack. Each layer has a specific function, each is operated by specific companies. And the reason the antitrust cases against Google matter, which we will get to in significant detail, is that Google controls all 3 of these layers simultaneously. That fact is the center of the entire legal argument. Keep it in mind as we build the picture. Layer 1, the publisher ad server. A publisher is any website or application that has content and has decided to monetize that content through advertising. That could be a news site, a sports app, a recipe blog, a weather application, a forum, any platform with an audience and available ad space. The publisher ad server is the software system that manages the ad inventory. It tracks which ad slots are available, the banner at the top of the page, the sidebar unit, the in-feed placement, the video pre-roll, and manages the process of filling those slots with paying ads. Think of it as the inventory management system, the stock listing. The dominant publisher ad server in the open web ecosystem, used by the large majority of significant web publishers, is Google Ad Manager. Layer 2, the ad exchange. The ad exchange is the marketplace. It is where publishers list their available inventory and where advertisers come to buy it. It is the trading floor. When a page loads and a publisher's ad slot becomes available, a signal goes from the publisher's ad server to the exchange. The exchange then runs the auction, broadcasting the availability to potential buyers and inviting bids. Google's primary ad exchange is called Google AdX, the Google Ad Exchange. It is one of the most significant in the world by transaction volume. Layer 3, the advertiser buying tool. On the other side of the auction are the buyers, brands, marketing agencies, performance advertisers, and their automated bidding systems. They use software called demand-side platforms, DSPs, to submit bids, manage campaign parameters, set targeting criteria, and control spending. Google's DSP for large-scale programmatic buying is called DV360, Display and Video 360. For smaller advertisers, the primary interface is Google Ads, formerly Google AdWords, the platform where the vast majority of search and display advertising campaigns are managed. Now, read these 3 layers back slowly. Publisher ad server, Google. Ad exchange, Google. Advertiser buying tool, Google. All three layers, the seller's side, the marketplace, and the buyer's side, are controlled by the same company. When a publisher uses Google's ad server and a buyer uses Google's buying tool, every party in that transaction on both sides of the deal is going through systems controlled by the same company. We are going to come back to what that means structurally. First, let's go inside the auction itself. Keep that picture in mind. 3 layers, 1 company, on both sides of the same deal. Because in about 15 minutes, we are going to look at the specific internal programs, the ones that got named in federal court proceedings, and what they tell you about how that position was actually used. And the names they gave those programs are something else. You navigate to a page, let's say a news article. The page begins to load. Your browser sends a request to the publisher's ad server. A visitor has arrived. What ad should be shown? The ad server registers the available slot and sends a bid request to the ad exchange. That bid request contains information about the ad placement, the size, the position, the format, the page context, and information about you. Not your name, not your home address. A behavioral profile assembled from observable signals across your digital activity. Your search history on Google, categorized by topic and purchase intent. Your YouTube viewing history, analyzed for interest signals and engagement patterns. Your browsing behavior across websites that carry Google's advertising code, which includes the vast majority of major commercial websites. Your device type, your browser, your approximate geographic location based on IP address. Your demographic inference, age range, income bracket, household composition, estimated from behavioral patterns and cross-referenced with aggregate data. Your in-market signals, categories of products you have been actively researching in recent days or weeks. All of this is encoded in the bid request and transmitted to potential buyers in milliseconds. On the other side of the exchange, advertisers, or more precisely, their automated bidding algorithms, receive this bid request. They evaluate it in a fraction of a second against their campaign parameters. Does this user's profile match the audience I am trying to reach? Is this the right moment and context to bid, or should I preserve budget for a higher value opportunity? What is the maximum price I am willing to pay for this specific impression? Those decisions are made algorithmically, by bidding engines operating at speeds no human process could match. Bids are submitted. The exchange evaluates them. In most programmatic auction structures, the winning bidder does not pay the full amount they bid. They pay slightly above the second highest bid, an approach called a second price auction, designed to encourage honest bidding by removing the incentive to bid below your actual valuation. The winning ad is selected, transmitted back through the ad server, delivered to your browser. Your page finishes loading. You see an ad. Total elapsed time under 200 milliseconds. You had no idea any of it happened. Now, here is what I want you to notice about this system. It is not random. It is not approximate. It is a precision instrument built to deliver the most commercially relevant ad to the most receptive audience at the exact moment of peak receptivity. And the precision depends entirely on the quality of the behavioral profile in that bid request. Which is why the data, not the ad unit, is the actual product being traded. The ad is the delivery mechanism. The behavioral profile is what gives that delivery its commercial value. Here is what most people miss about how those profiles are built. There are multiple distinct data collection mechanisms operating simultaneously. The most familiar is the cookie, a small data file stored in your browser that tracks behavior across websites. When you visit a site that has Google's advertising technology embedded, and this includes the vast majority of major commercial websites, Google's code on that page can observe your presence and record it. Over time, those observations build a behavioral map. Search history contributes directly. Queries run on Google.com are observed, stored, and categorized by topic and commercial intent. YouTube history contributes. What you watch, how long you watch it, what you skip, what you replay. Location data, where permitted, contributes. Your physical movement patterns tell advertisers things your browsing activity alone cannot. Mobile device identifiers contribute, connecting your behavior across different apps and sessions to a persistent profile. These signals across multiple sources are synthesized into audience segments, categorical labels that describe who you are commercially. You might be categorized as in market for a laptop because you searched for laptop comparisons multiple times in the past week. You might be categorized as frequent traveler because location data shows regular transit through airports. You might be placed in a specific income bracket because your aggregate browsing behavior matches patterns associated with that bracket across the broader population. These categories are what advertisers are bidding on. Not a specific website, not an ad slot. An audience segment at the precise moment that segment member is present and potentially receptive. And here is something worth stopping on. Different audience segments command dramatically different bid prices. A person who has spent the past 2 weeks researching mortgage refinancing options is one of the most commercially valuable audience targets in the digital advertising ecosystem. The banks, mortgage lenders, and financial service companies competing for that person's attention are prepared to pay significant amounts per click. A person passively reading general interest content with no recent purchase intent signals might generate a fraction of that bid price. The variable that drives the difference is signal specificity, how precisely the behavioral data identifies a commercially high-value moment. Nobody built a more complete picture of that signal than Google. Because Google observes both sides of the intent cycle. It sees what you search for, which captures active, declared intent. And it sees what you browse, what you watch, where you travel, which captures passive interest and lifestyle context. The combination of active and passive behavioral signals gives Google's profiling depth that is fundamentally difficult for competitors to replicate without the same breadth of product reach. And here is what I want you to hold in mind before we move on. We have just walked through how the auction works and how the profiles are built. What we have not yet looked at is this. What does it actually mean that one company controls every layer of that auction simultaneously? That question is the one that 2 separate federal courts spent years investigating. And the specific recorded behaviors they examined and what they found are where this story goes from interesting to extraordinary. Before we get to the antitrust analysis, one more dimension of the data infrastructure is worth understanding because it is actively changing the system right now. The cookie, as a tracking mechanism, is under sustained regulatory and technical pressure. Apple's Safari browser and Mozilla's Firefox both block third-party tracking cookies by default, meaning cookies set by Google's advertising code on a site you visit, not by the site itself. Google announced plans to phase out third-party cookies in its own Chrome browser, which holds the dominant share of global browser traffic based on published usage data. The proposed replacement, called the Privacy Sandbox, is a set of browser-based technologies designed to allow interest-based targeting without transmitting raw behavioral data to third parties. The idea, instead of advertisers accessing your browsing history directly through cookies, your browser itself categorizes your interests locally and reports anonymized audience signals. The advertiser knows they are reaching someone interested in, say, financial products, but they do not receive the underlying browsing data that produced that classification. In practice, the implementation of privacy sandbox technologies has been significantly slower and more complex than initially projected. As of the most recently available public reporting, Google has delayed the full deprecation of third-party cookies in Chrome multiple times. The broader industry transition away from cookie-based tracking is happening, but it is a gradual, contested, technically complex process. And it matters to the core advertising business because the precision of behavioral targeting depends on the richness of the data feeding into it. A world with less cross-site tracking data is theoretically a world with slightly less precise audience targeting. But here is what most analysts miss about this transition. Google's first-party data, the data it collects directly from users logged into Google accounts across Search, Gmail, Maps, and YouTube, is not affected by the third-party cookie deprecation. Google does not need a third-party cookie to know what you searched for on Google.com. It knows that directly. It owns the search engine. The companies most affected by cookie deprecation are the advertisers and ad tech competitors who relied on third-party cookies to build their own behavioral profiles. Google's first-party data position remains intact, and the transition to a cookieless environment may, in some ways, increase the relative value of that first-party position. This is not a trivial observation. It is part of the structural picture. Stop. Before we get to the court findings, I want you to hold one picture in your mind, because this is the part of the story where the mechanics you just learned become critically important. Imagine one company simultaneously owns the listing system where sellers post their inventory, the marketplace where buyers and sellers meet, and the tool through which buyers submit their bids. Every transaction passes through systems controlled by that same entity on both sides of the deal. That entity has the ability to observe all bids. It sets the rules of the auction. It can give its own tools advantages at any layer. And because its integrated position creates compounding advantages, competitors at any single layer face a barrier that is extremely difficult to overcome. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is the precise architecture that Google built in digital advertising, as established in the findings of two separate federal courts. Publisher Ad Server, Google Ad Manager, dominant among large web publishers based on published market analysis. Ad Exchange, Google AdX, one of the most significant by verified transaction volume. Advertiser buying tools, Google Ads and DV360, the primary interface for the large majority of digital advertisers globally. 3 layers, one company, on both sides of the vast majority of significant transactions in the open web advertising ecosystem. The two federal antitrust cases need to be understood separately because they address different aspects of this position and are frequently confused with each other. Case 1. Filed by the Department of Justice in October 2020, joined ultimately by the Attorneys General of 49 states, 2 territories, and the District of Columbia. The focus? Google's monopoly in general search services and search text advertising. The specific conduct at issue: Google's practice of paying device manufacturers, mobile carriers, and browser developers large sums to make Google the default search engine. The scale of those payments became fully established during the trial proceedings. In 2021, Google paid Apple approximately $18 billion. $18 billion as part of this arrangement. $18 billion to one company in a single year. That payment gave Google the default search position on every iPhone, iPad, and Safari browser, reaching a combined installed base in the hundreds of millions of devices. In August 2024, Judge Amit Mehta of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia issued a 277-page ruling. His finding: Google had illegally maintained a monopoly in general search services and general search text advertising in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The specific mechanism: by using those enormous default payments to lock out competing search engines, Google denied competitors the query volume needed to improve their search quality and the scale needed to make their advertising products commercially competitive. The consequence, Judge Mehta highlighted: this created a self-reinforcing cycle. Google's scale allowed it to generate the most revenue per search, which allowed it to pay the highest default fees, which generated the most search volume, which generated the most revenue. In September 2025, Judge Mehta issued his ruling on remedies. He imposed behavioral restrictions, including barring Google from entering exclusive default search agreements. He rejected the government's request to force Google to divest Chrome or Android. The DOJ has cross-appealed that decision, seeking Chrome divestiture. That appeal is expected to be heard in late 2026 or early 2027. Case 2. Filed by the Department of Justice in January 2023. The focus? Google's monopoly in the open web digital advertising technology market, the ad tech stack we described earlier in this video. The specific conduct at issue, a set of recorded practices by which Google allegedly used its control of multiple layers of the ad tech stack to maintain and reinforce its dominant position. Here are the most significant of those practices as recorded in the court proceedings. Project Bernanke, an internal Google program through which Google allegedly used data from its advertiser-side buying tools to improve its exchange's performance in ways that gave it an advantage over competing exchanges. The allegation: because Google could see bid data from both sides of the auction, from advertisers using its buying tools and from publishers using its exchange, it could use that information asymmetry in ways competing exchanges could not. Dynamic revenue sharing, a pricing mechanism that critics argued allowed Google's exchange to win auctions it might otherwise have lost by strategically adjusting the fee it charged publishers in real time. Reserve price manipulation, conduct described in the proceedings as Project Poirot, an internal effort that allegedly resulted in auction rules that disadvantaged the header bidding approaches that publishers had developed specifically to reduce Google's structural advantage. In April 2025, Judge Leonie Brinkema of the Eastern District of Virginia ruled that Google had illegally built monopoly power in open web digital advertising. Judge Brinkema's written ruling found that Google's conduct had caused harm across all sides of the market, to publishers, to competing ad technology companies, and to the broader open web ecosystem. That is a federal court finding. It is on the public record. It is not an opinion. And I want to be clear, because this is important. The information in this video is educational analysis of publicly available court records, published research, and recorded business practices. This is not legal commentary, and nothing here should be taken as investment advice or a recommendation regarding any company's securities. Now, here is what I want to be precise about regarding the antitrust outcomes. Both cases are in active appeals processes that will take years to fully resolve. The final structural outcome, what Google's advertising architecture looks like at the end of those appeals, is genuinely uncertain. What is not uncertain is the architecture itself, how it was built, what it controls, and what the courts found about how that control was exercised. That part is on the public record, verified and established through formal legal proceedings. And here is something worth stopping on in the context of the Apple payments specifically. The Apple deal was not incidental to Google's business. It was foundational to its search volume dominance. Apple's installed base of devices represents a significant share of premium, high purchasing power users globally. Losing default search placement on those devices to a competitor would not simply cost Google revenue, it would cost Google the query volume that those users generate. That query volume feeds the machine learning systems that improve Google's search quality. Better search quality attracts more users. More users generate more queries. More queries generate more data. The default placement fee was not just buying ad revenue. It was buying the data inputs that maintained the core competitive advantage. And Apple, for its part, collected those payments and incorporated them into its services revenue, a revenue stream that Wall Street has priced at a significant premium multiple relative to hardware revenue. The antitrust remedy that bars exclusive default agreements creates a financial exposure for Apple that has accelerated its internal development of AI-native search and browsing capabilities. One court ruling. Two of the world's most valuable companies restructuring their strategic roadmaps in response. That is how deeply this architecture is embedded in the broader economy. The global digital advertising market, the total amount spent globally on digital advertising, sits at hundreds of billions of dollars annually. Major research and industry sources, including Group M and eMarketer, have placed the figure at approximately $700 billion or more in recent years, with continued growth projected. To put that in perspective, that is larger than the GDP of most countries on Earth. And the large majority of that spend flows through auction systems of the type we just described. Within that total, different categories of advertising command very different prices per unit of audience exposure. Search advertising, the ads appearing next to or above search results, is one of the most expensive category per impression on average. The reason is intent. A search query is a declared desire. That makes the audience commercially actionable in a way that passive audiences are not. Display advertising, the visual banner units on web pages, is typically less expensive per impression. The audience is present, but their commercial intent at that specific moment is unobserved. Video advertising, pre-roll and mid-roll placements on YouTube and across the broader video ecosystem, sits between the two in typical pricing, depending on the targeting precision applied. And within each category, the price variance based on audience targeting is dramatic. A generic placement targeting broad demographics might generate a few dollars per 1,000 impressions. A precisely targeted placement reaching people who have actively been researching high-value financial products in the past 2 weeks in a specific age and income bracket on a specific device type might generate 10 to 30 times that rate per 1,000 impressions. The difference between those two numbers is entirely the quality of the behavioral data. Here is what this means for the concrete dollar value of your attention. Your attention is not worth a fixed amount. It is worth a variable amount determined by what signals about you are available to advertisers at the moment of the auction. When you are actively researching a high-value purchase, a mortgage, a car, software for your business, your attention commands a premium. When you are passively browsing with no detectable commercial intent, it commands significantly less. The system that determines that price difference is the auction, and the data that feeds the auction is everything we described earlier in this video. Now, let me make this concrete rather than abstract. When you run a Google Ads campaign for the first time, when you actually build an ad and go into the targeting interface, you discover that you can specify your audience by age range, by estimated household income percentile, by parental status, by geographic location at the city or postal code level, by device type, by interest categories, by in-market behavioral signals, and by remarketing audiences built from your own site visitors. That level of targeting precision, down to an audience of people who are actively in the market for exactly what you sell, in the specific income bracket you want to reach, on the specific device they use, raises an obvious question the first time you see it. What data infrastructure would have to exist for this kind of precision to be possible? The answer is the complete behavioral observation system we spent the previous section describing. And the moment you understand what had to be collected to enable that targeting, the free product model takes on a different dimension. The products are free to use. The behavioral data generated by using them is the input that makes the advertising inventory valuable. The user is not paying with money. The user is paying with data. And that data is monetized continuously, at scale, through the auction system. Here is the economic insight that rarely gets discussed at the structural level. Advertisers pay Google. That is the transaction everyone is aware of. But where does the money advertisers pay Google come from? It comes from their operating budgets, which are funded by their revenue, which comes from the prices they charge for their products and services. Advertising spend is a cost of doing business. Like any cost, it is incorporated into pricing decisions. The companies running Google Ads campaigns factor that ad spend into the price of the goods and services they sell, which means the cost of the digital advertising system is embedded, distributed, and invisible across the consumer prices of a vast range of products and services. You are not paying Google directly, but you are purchasing from companies that pay Google, and the prices of those products reflect, in part, those advertising costs. The advertising expenditure is hidden in the price tag. This is not unique to Google advertising. It applies to advertising spend in any medium: television, print, outdoor, radio. But at the scale that digital advertising now operates, and with the concentration of that spend through a small number of dominant platforms, the structural significance of that embedded cost warrants serious attention. Some economists have described this as a platform tax, the systemic cost that flows through commerce when a dominant intermediary controls the connection between producers and consumers. And here is the structural observation that most analysis skips entirely. Most discussion of Google's advertising model focuses on the advertising itself, the ads you see, the targeting, the auction mechanics. Very few people ask the question that sits at the center of this entire analysis. What does this system fund, and what happens if the system faces serious structural disruption? Chrome, approximately 65% of the global browser market based on verified usage data. Android, approximately 72% of the global smartphone operating system market based on recent verified estimates. Gmail, approximately 1.8 billion active users based on recent company disclosures. Google Maps, the dominant navigation platform by most measures of global usage. YouTube, approximately 2.5 billion monthly active users based on recent reported figures. All free products, all substantially subsidized by the same advertising revenue engine. Not peripherally, foundationally. The advertising revenue funds the infrastructure, the engineering, the server capacity, and the ongoing development of all of these platforms. Remove the advertising engine, and the free product ecosystem does not have an obvious replacement funding source. Almost nobody asks this question, and it is one of the most structurally important questions in this entire analysis. Because there is now a genuine challenge developing to that advertising engine, and we need to look at it directly. Here is how search advertising works at the most basic mechanical level. A user types a query into Google search. Google returns a results page, a list of organic search results, and at the top, and sometimes alongside, paid advertising placements. Advertisers bid to appear in those paid positions for specific search queries or audience segments. The ads appear on the results page. Users see them, some click. Advertisers pay per click. This model, in various forms, accounts for the dominant share of Google's total advertising revenue based on published Alphabet financial disclosures. Now consider what happens to that model if the results page stops being the primary interface for answering queries. AI chatbots and agents, including Google's own Gemini, but also competing systems, answer questions directly and conversationally. And if you want to understand the physical infrastructure that makes AI systems like Gemini possible at the scale we are discussing, the data centers, the electricity, the capital behind AI compute, I covered that in full in a prior video. It is in the info cards above. No results page, a direct, synthesized answer. If a user asks an AI assistant, what are the best noise-canceling headphones for under $300? And the system provides a complete, specific, direct answer, there is no results page for an advertiser to appear on. No ad slot, no impression, no click, no revenue. The search advertising business model depends, at the mechanical level, on the results page existing as the interface between the user's question and the answer. Replace the results page with a direct conversational answer, and the ad placement architecture has no surface to attach to. This is the structural disruption that the AI transition creates for the core advertising business. And the scale of what is at stake is worth being precise about. Search advertising generates the dominant share of Google's total advertising revenue among the largest single advertiser-funded revenue streams of any company in the world. That revenue, as we established, subsidizes the major free products in the Google ecosystem. The AI transition is not a minor competitive irritant. It is a potential challenge to the foundational revenue architecture of one of the most significant commercial enterprises ever built. The honest question is, how fast is this actually happening? And the honest answer is, the evidence is mixed, and the timeline is genuinely uncertain. There are recorded signals of changed search behavior among certain user segments, particularly younger, more technically sophisticated users. But a dramatic, measurable collapse in Google's search revenue has not appeared in verified Alphabet financial reports as of the most recent publicly available disclosure periods. The transition, if it happens at the scale that some analysts project, is most likely to unfold over years, not quarters. Anyone presenting the collapse of Google's search business as imminent is overstating what the published data shows. Anyone presenting it as impossible is underestimating the genuine structural significance of what the AI shift represents. The intellectually honest position is to hold both of those observations at the same time. The advancement of AI at its current pace has broad economic implications across all industries, including search. Now, here is where I want to give you my honest read on this. And I want to be transparent from the start. What follows is my view, based on the data currently available, Google's verified capital expenditure commitments, and their publicly stated plans around AI and infrastructure. In my view, the framing of Google as a company under existential threat from the AI transition significantly underestimates what Google actually is. Because Google is not just a search advertising company, it is one of the most deeply integrated digital ecosystems ever built. Start with YouTube, already one of the most watched video platforms on Earth, with approximately 2.5 billion monthly active users based on recent reported figures. YouTube Premium already generates subscription revenue from users who pay to remove ads. For the vast majority who use it free, advertising continues to run. The ad inventory on YouTube is entirely separate from the search results page debate. That is an enormous, already monetized platform that sits outside the search advertising disruption conversation entirely. Then consider Google's broader subscription architecture. Google One, storage subscriptions across hundreds of millions of accounts. Google Workspace, the productivity suite used by businesses globally. There are many other subscriptions and platforms like these in the Google ecosystem, with revenue that grows independently of what happens to any single advertising format. And then there is the AI dimension, which is where I think the most underappreciated commercial opportunity actually sits. Google's AI subscription plans are growing, and based on Google's publicly disclosed capital expenditure commitments, the infrastructure being built is not the infrastructure of a company preparing to defend a declining business. It is the infrastructure of a company preparing to expand into the next one. Here is what most analysis misses about the AI advertising opportunity specifically. AI chatbots and AI agents are not just replacing search queries, they are becoming continuous, deeply personal work environments that people use for significant portions of their day. Someone using Google's AI agents for automated task completion, running workflows, managing schedules, processing information, is present in that environment for hours. At the moments where the user appears, the manual checkpoints, the review stages, the decision points where human input is needed, there is a natural, non-intrusive surface for contextually relevant sponsored content. And for AI chat interfaces specifically, the personalization data available from a full conversation context, combined with Google's existing behavioral profile depth, creates a targeting surface that is arguably more precise than any prior advertising format. A sponsored suggestion that emerges naturally within a conversation, timed to a moment of genuine commercial intent, informed by the full context of what the user is working on and what they have searched for over months. That is a more commercially powerful placement than a banner at the top of a search results page, not a weaker one. And here is the dimension of Google's position that I think the AI kills Google narrative consistently fails to account for. The ecosystem integration advantage. Chrome, Android, Gmail, Google Maps, YouTube, Google Workspace, Google One, Gemini. When all of these platforms are connected, when your AI assistant can access your calendar to schedule a meeting, pull context from your email to answer a question, remember your preferences from prior conversations, and integrate with the applications you already use daily, the experience becomes meaningfully more useful than a standalone AI tool operating with no knowledge of you. The switching cost is not forced, it is earned through genuine utility that compounds the longer you remain inside the ecosystem. That depth of integration is one of Google's most durable structural advantages in the AI era, and it was built over 2 decades of free product expansion, funded by the very advertising model we spent this video analyzing. So in my view, for the short to medium term, the data does not support the conclusion that Google's commercial model is in structural decline. It supports the conclusion that Google's model is in active, well-resourced transition toward AI-native monetization surfaces that may prove more valuable, not less, than the ones they are evolving from. That is my read, based on the data and the research available today. It is an opinion, not a certainty, and that distinction matters, because the honest reality is that AI is advancing at a pace that makes confident long-range predictions genuinely unreliable. The industry is releasing meaningful AI updates on a near daily basis right now. The competitive landscape is shifting faster than most forecasting models can track. And at the far end of that trajectory, the destination that the largest technology companies and the most powerful governments on Earth are collectively spending trillions of dollars annually to reach, is something called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, the threshold at which AI systems can perform at a high level the full range of cognitive tasks a human being can perform, not narrow, specific tasks, but general reasoning, learning, and problem-solving across any domain. When that threshold is crossed, if and when it is, the economic consequences will extend far beyond advertising, far beyond Google, and far beyond anything mapped. I have covered what AGI does to the economy in full in a prior video. I will put it in the info cards. You have spent close to an hour understanding one of the most consequential economic architectures of the modern digital world. If you want the framework for reading how forces like this translate into actual economic signals and market movement, I wrote a book for exactly that. It is called How to Read the Market. Inside, there's a 3-step framework for identifying which financial news headlines represent a real signal worth analyzing, and which represent noise designed to create reactions. There is a clear breakdown of the 5 key economic reports that actually drive market trends, from GDP data to the jobs report, and how to interpret what each of them is actually saying. And there's a guide to understanding how central bank interest rate decisions create the gravitational force that shapes the value of virtually every portfolio and asset class. It is designed to move you from being a passive consumer of financial information to being an active, analytical reader of the market. The link is in the description below. Quick note, that link takes you to the US store at Amazon.com. If you are outside the United States, simply change the .com in the URL to your country's domain, .in for India, .co.uk for the United Kingdom, to order from your local Amazon with faster and often cheaper delivery. The QR code on screen takes you directly to the page as well. Let's close the loop. We started with a question. How does a company that most of its users have never paid generate trillions of dollars in revenue over the years? The answer is a system that runs invisibly, at speeds measured in milliseconds, underneath nearly every ad-supported page you load on the open web. A real-time auction where your behavioral profile is the inventory, your attention is the product, and the companies that want to reach you are the actual paying customers. A system built on 3 interconnected layers: publisher ad server, ad exchange, advertiser buying tool, that one company controls simultaneously. A position that 2 separate federal courts have now found to constitute illegal monopoly behavior through specific, on-the-record conduct. A system that funds not just search results, but the browser on your device, the operating system on your phone, the email in your inbox, the navigation tool in your car, and the video platform you watch daily. And a system that is now actively evolving into AI-native interfaces, deeper ecosystem integration, and monetization surfaces that did not exist a decade ago. The answer to the question we opened with, who is paying and for what, is now fully in front of you. The paying customers are the advertisers. What they are paying for is access to you, your attention, your intent, your behavior, priced and auctioned in real time. The free product is not actually free. The price is just invisible. And now, it is not invisible to you. Google's advertising architecture is one of the most sophisticated commercial systems ever built. It produced real value. It changed how billions of people access information and navigate the world. And it created a concentration of data intelligence, infrastructure, and commercial power that the world is only now beginning to examine seriously through antitrust proceedings, regulatory reviews, and the question of what the AI era means for the economics of the free internet. Understanding how it works at the mechanical level, not the summary level, the actual mechanical level, is not optional if you want to understand how the modern economy actually functions. Because this system is not peripheral to the digital economy, it is foundational to it. If you found this kind of analysis useful, hit like below. It makes a real difference in reaching people who want genuine explanations rather than surface-level takes. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper into how the global financial and economic systems actually work at the mechanical level. And the videos appearing on your screen right now, those are the ones I would point you to next. They explore connected parts of the global financial architecture in the same depth we went today. I will see you in the next one.